So my first question is for you, Richard. It's $1 million question. What exactly inspired
What
this?
on earth were you thinking?
What on earth were you thinking? This epic, and I don't use that word lightly, endeavor.
I wanted to tell a story about childhood and about parenting, and I couldn't really pick a spot. You know, I didn't have my 400 blows moment. You know, my ideas were spread out over all of it. So I'd kind of almost given up on the idea right at that moment where you're kind of, okay, it's just not going to work. Boom, you know, this idea comes in my head. Well, why couldn't you just shoot a little bit every year, and that would, you know, this kind of broad cinematic canvas presented itself. I was like, oh, that would tell the story. I mean, that's the cool thing. I had solved my narrative problem, but then I'd created another problem, like, oh, the impractical, how are you going to do this over 12 years? You know, that's the impractical side. But the storytelling side, I felt really confident in. Like, I hadn't seen that before, and I thought, wow, that could work, you know, this kind of accumulation of intimate moments. And the tone, everything came to me in that one 1st through 12th grade, all that. It was just, we were grateful to have the opportunity to tell this story in this way, and such a unique experience, you know, seeing this guy, you know, I met when he was 6 years old, and he sits before you as a 19-year-old young man, you know, so it's been an amazing, like, life project, you know. So.
How was Ellar discovered? Did you audition? Did your parents put you up for this?
I just went to an audition.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a headshot and a resume at that time. I had been in a couple like commercials and small films in Austin, and yeah, I just went to an audition and went to about 9 more or so, and
It was a big decision.
Yeah, I wanted to be sure, and just kind of talked. You know, I mean, obviously there weren't really scenes for me to read or anything, so kind of just chatted, and I showed Rick some of my art, and I don't know.
Yeah. But he talked very passionately about movies, and music was a big part of his life, and art, and just his thought process. And I was like, I don't know if I probably had an element of myself at that age, but I think I was more like in sports, and I met a lot of kids like that. Mm-hmm. So I remember thinking, well, I want this movie to represent what I consider the better part of myself. You know, like, so I kind of went with the ethereal, mysterious artist kid whose parents are artists, who I thought would kind of, but it was just staring at this kid kind of going, who are you going to be? You know, what are you going to be like all these years from now? It's a big, you know, I always make a joke, it's like figuring out who the next Dalai Lama is going to be. You know, they put out the stuff like, who are you, young man? You know, so.
The child performances in this film are incredibly naturalistic, also from your daughter as well, who plays Ellar's sister in the film. How do you go about directing children? Do you just take the same approach with kids as you do with adults, or?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I try to include them and, you know, collaborate with them. I think at the very beginning, a lot of rehearsal, just, you know, treat them like any other, you know, adult. It's a little bit more of a manipulation. They don't have the experience, but, you know, I remember I had been a parent. You know, Lorelei was 9, you know, when we started, so I'd have been a parent that long, and I hadn't really worked with kids at that point. But it came really natural to me, I feel. I mean, right after we shot our first episode, I came up here and did School of Rock. So suddenly I had a whole film of, you know, 10, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds. So I got a dose of working with kids, you know, at this era.
So about the casting of Patricia, you never worked with Richard before. You have some personal ties to the role. I mean, you yourself were a young mother as well.
Obviously, being a parent is your primary thing in your life. But when he called me about this idea, I just got so excited immediately, and I wanted to be a part of it. And everything about it was unorthodox, you know. He didn't go through the whole battering ram of agents and that whole situation. Just called me directly, told me about this idea. It really excited me. And I said I wanted to do it, and he said, we don't have any money. And I said, I want to do it. And he said, I was like, oh, yeah, what's my part? And he told me a little bit, and I said, I guess I should read the script. And he's like, we don't have a script. Here's sort of, you know, the main things your character and the family will go through, and those all stayed the same. So everything about it was sort of like jumping off a cliff, trusting completely in the process, collaboratively working together. I think a lot of people would be afraid, like, what do you mean you don't have a script? How do I know I will like the tone? How will I know, you know, that I like what my character's saying? I don't know about this. But it always just felt right, the whole thing, and it really felt beautiful, and it felt like maybe the way we ought to work in this business. There was no ever power struggles or anything other than support, I think, for everybody and from everybody.
Well, I'm definitely spoiled. I like having a year off after I shoot every 3 or 4 days to think about what's next, to edit, to kind of just imagine, feel my
This
way
is the
through.
only film you made over those 12
Yeah.
years. I mean, you've been pretty busy.
Yeah. Over the 4,200 plus days of this, we only shot about 39 of those. So.
And you spent 2 years in the editing room on this.
Yeah, if you added, the numbers
collectively.
on this film are really crazy. I mean, we spent a year in pre-production if you add it all up. It was like making 12 movies. And then we spent about 2 years if you add up all the weeks in the editing room over that 12 years. So, yeah, the numbers are everything about this movie was unusual in that regard. Continues to be.
So Ellar, given that you never watched any footage, over the course of 12 years, can you take me back to when you first saw it? What that whole experience was like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I watched it by myself about 2 or 3 times in a row, I think, right before Sundance, and I mean, it's brutal. Not in a negative way, really, just catharsis, kind of, I mean, it was hard to think much the first time. The first couple times, I was kind of just like waterworks for a couple days, honestly. But I think it's a very kind of mysterious part of yourself, the way you change over time, and it's also, I think everybody struggles with kind of feeling real or feeling like a human being, and just to see all of these kind of parts of myself that individually might be like painful or embarrassing or something, or an incomplete person, just all put together like that, kind of in context, is very, I don't know, comforting in a way.
For me, I loved endings. I love finishing jobs. I love not knowing what I'm doing next. I like to be done with something and move on. And last year, I was really sad that we were finishing shooting this movie. And I really, maybe it's a jaded quality or something, I didn't want to give it to the world. I felt like we were giving birth to this baby and then feeding it to wolves or something. Like, these people aren't going to understand this. Like, I feel this human resonance. I feel this intense emotion. I feel this incredible love, this gratitude, and this openness about this movie and this experience. But I don't know if people are going to get it. So it's been really incredible to feel people have. And I've never had an experience where a movie was so warmly embraced and people are having conversations about being human beings and connecting. But still, as beautiful as this is, I would still trade it to keep making the movie. Because that was really just an incredible acting gift and human gift.